Welcome to the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast, where we hope to inspire you to embrace your God-given gifts, skills, and passions in order to lead with confidence. We want you to remember that you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God, and you are fully loved by Him.
You have been designed on purpose by God with unique gifts and passions in order to love and lead those around you. I'm your host, Esther Littlefield, a pastor's wife, business owner, mom, and writer.
And I'm Esther's co-host, Polly Payne. I'm a wife, mom, and business owner. I also write at hollypayne.org, where I focus on my passion for women's ministry.
Together, we chat about important issues that Christian women leaders face. In addition, we interview other women just like you who lead in various roles, from church to community to business. Through this podcast, we offer you encouragement, tools, and resources to help you on your leadership journey. We are so glad you're here with us. Hi, friend, and welcome to today's episode. I'm your host, Esther Littlefield, and I am so glad that you are joining me today. Have you ever thought about starting a business, or have you ever had a dream in your heart that you wanted to follow, but you weren't quite sure how to get started? Maybe there's this idea that's been percolating and you have even started to take action, and maybe you've seen some success, but you still can't figure out when to make the jump from your full-time gig to the dream. In today's conversation, you're going to hear Holly and I talk with our guest, Polly Payne, about how she left a successful career in advertising to pursue her dream by starting a planner company. But it didn't happen overnight, and Polly shares some practical wisdom about how to know when to take the leap. She also shares about one of the biggest blunders she made when starting her company and some of the leadership lessons and insights that she has learned along the way. Polly talks about paying attention to pivot points in your life, and she'll share what that looks like, as well as just being willing to follow the leading of God and just jump in and say yes when He is leading. I loved that part of our conversation. And we also dive into what it looks like to dream, especially after a season of discouragement. Now, I know you're going to love this conversation as much as Holly and I did. Oh, and one more thing. You are definitely going to want to check out the dream planner that Polly created. Now, I know there are 1,000 planners out there that you can choose from, and it can be overwhelming to pick a planner. But I want to tell you, I received one of these, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I love it, and I can't wait to start using it for 2022. So I want you to check it out. I will give you a special code to get 10% off of your order. I'll put the link in the show notes, and the code is just my name, Esther, and the number 10. So Esther 10, it's going to give you 10% off of your order. So go on over to the show notes, check out these planners. I'll also include some photos in the show notes as well. All right, let's dive into our conversation with Polly Payne. All right. Welcome, Polly, to the podcast. We are excited to be talking with you today. So could you start us off by sharing a little bit about what your life and your leadership role looks like right now?
Well, first off, I'm so thankful to be here. Thanks for having me, Esther and Holly. So my life and leadership, I am the CEO and founder of Horatio Printing, HORACIO Printing. And I'm also the teacher in the Horatio Printing Academy. So I have a dream crafting course and a business course helping people really create faith-filled businesses and let that dream not become a burden or an idol or something that really takes them out. Because I've been there. I've been there where, you pursue a dream and it gets really big, but it gets really hard. And anyway, so that's kind of a little bit about me. I'm a mom. I have another child on the way. I think when this is airing, I'll maybe be in labor.
Wow. Congratulations.
That's exciting.
Due date is December 29th. So if this child's anything like my last child, he will be very late. So probably not. So anyways, I'm a mompreneur. I guess that's the term. And I've been running my business for 7 years now. It started off as a side hustle while I was working full time in advertising, marketing, sales in New York City. Slowly built that. And after a year and a half, I took the leap and been growing it ever since.
I love that. I think that's so interesting. I'm so excited to get to hear a little bit more about that leap when you actually took it, that sort of thing. But before we get to that, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your leadership journey and maybe when you realized that you were a leader.
Well, I've always realized that I like to be in charge, maybe a bit of a control freak to a fault.
You're in good company here.
Yeah. And, I like things done a certain way. Yikes. So I started being a leader, having interns at my company in New York. And I really enjoyed that, pouring into somebody, teaching them things. When I left my corporate career, I was a senior sales director. So I had some people that I was working with on the sales team, but for the most part, a sales team, everyone's pretty individualized, which is nice. You kind of get to run your own thing, so to speak, which is the nice part about being in sales. But I don't know if I started my business because I was like, gosh, I'm a leader. But I definitely started my business because I knew I needed to create something. But I was very, very aware that I'm not going to go anywhere by myself. I needed a team. I needed people that would fill the gaps for me. And it's so critical to know yourself, know your gaps, and be ready to invest in other people. And so I very quickly hired 2 interns that were actually interns at my corporate job that went to church with me to help me design this. Because at that time, I didn't know how to build a website fully. At least I didn't know how to build one beautifully. And I wasn't great at Instagram, at least with like consistency, aesthetics. Back in 2014, it was like, okay, I'll put a sepia filter on something and throw it up there. Like it was just, I was not very skilled at that and design in general. So I could sketch something out, but turning it from my brain to like an actual product in hand, I was good at the project management, but I needed the help. So I started hiring. And with that, you become a leader,
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the journey there. And I knew I needed to invest in myself as a leader. Mm-hmm. And so I quickly took Tony Robbins' business mastery course, went to London, did that for, I think it was like 5 days intensive course, which was a big catalyst for me in growth, in understanding my accounting, in understanding marketing and sales beyond what I already knew it as. So I just started investing in myself, investing in things to help me grow, reading as many books as possible, positive intelligence. I was hooked on Tim Ferriss's The 5-Hour Workweek back in 2012 or 11. And I got kind of like the bug of the entrepreneur. I was just looking for my muse for all those years. But yeah, reading was big. I knew I couldn't afford an MBA, so I was going to read my way there. Because that's the truth. I've learned about education or college. It was like, as long as you read the book, you'll get an A. Like, you just got to read the whole book. So it's like, well, why pay for college when you can just go buy the books? So I would go buy every book I could. The Business Model Generation, I read that when I was starting my business. And that was super helpful with just mind mapping out my business model, and been reading ever since, kind of.
Mm. That's so amazing, Polly, because we say on this podcast, leaders are learners. And so it sounds like you just had that attitude from the start, that you were just going to do everything you needed to do to learn what was necessary to get your business off the ground. So that's amazing. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what actually led you to creating this company. Like, did you see a need for the product? And you can share a little more about what you sell in your store if you want. But do you want to share how that initial like side hustle got started?
Yeah. So I'll take you back August 2014. At this point, I told you I'd read the 4-Hour Workweek. I wanted to start a business. I had that itch or that vision for my life of starting a business, but I always had this idea, I'm not smart enough. Like, I'm just not. Like, I still don't know some of my 7 times tables. Like, I misspell things all the time. Like, I'm not that smart. But my dad would say that I've got a lot of charisma. And so people skills, that's what you've got, Polly. And so 2014, August, I had a dream that I'd written down to start a planner company, but I wanted to start this planner company, which is kind of what Golden Coil has created now, where you can go in and customize what you want and then print it out. And it could have like whatever you wanted inside. Mine was going to be a little more customizable. Like you could add the mom feature, you could add the fitness feature, you could add the Christian feature, you could add or take that out. Like you could make it what you want. And I could never figure out that puzzle piece of how to actually print on demand and make that work at a price point. So I just kind of tabled it. And then I went to church in August. And this was a month for me where I was really just flowing down the river of life. And I washed up on a bank of just unhealthy sickness. It was my birthday, this bachelorette party, this engagement party, this industry event. And I was a salesperson. My job was to take out groups of clients out on the town in New York City. And I loved it. I thrived at that. I was taking people out. I had an expense card and that was fun. I would take people to this show and that show and whatever. But it was too much. I was doing too much. I was everyone's fun friend. And I wasn't taking care of my soul. I wasn't taking care of my body. I wasn't keeping track of how much I was going out and partying. And I hit a bottom. I washed up on a bank and I was like, who am I and how did I get here? This is too much. And I had gone to church that week and Erwin McManus had preached about the artisan soul, his book. And so I picked it up because the sermon was so good. The fact that we are all artists because we're created in the image of God and we are naturally designed to want to create something and want to build something. And that our most important work of art is our life. And if we don't pick up the paintbrush and create something intentionally, the world and our life will just flow and we won't realize why we're here. And I was like, ding, 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 that's me. So I was reading the book one night and I realized, okay, I got to get my life together. Like I've got to do something about this. And one of his action items in the book was to create a list of your distractions, create an exit strategy, and execute it. And so I did a bubble chart of everything I'm doing in my life, schmoozing clients, work, this, that, and the other, everything in a big bubble chart. And I just started red crossing out things I needed to let go of. And it was in that moment I said, okay, if I'm going to live this life and craft something and do the dreams I've been talking about for years, I've got to make some changes. I've got to make some drastic moves. And I need a planner to do that because I've always been a planner girl through and through. I was that kid in middle school that when the school gave you a planner, I had it on the last day. I was still filling it out because I'm so forgetful. If I didn't fill it out, the homework didn't get done. And so I decided I'm going to make a planner and I'm going to make it for the Christian woman. I mean, a man can use it if he wants, but a woman will probably like it more because it has calligraphy on the front. And I started drawing it out in my sketchbook that night. And I just stayed up till 3 a.m. and these ideas kept popping into my head. And that next week I talked to my interns who at that point had helped me build another idea that I threw away, kind of threw in the trash can. And they were like, yeah, let's build a planner. That sounds cool. And from August to October, we started building in September. We launched the company. So that's the story of how it got started. And then from there, I bought 1,000. I used my savings and we sold those 1,000 by January. And I was floored. The money we earned wasn't enough to quit my job or it wasn't like, woohoo. But it was like, I'd hired these interns. I'd paid them. We had to pay back the money I invested in the company. And it was gone by March. But the next year we did a Kickstarter and raised the money to fund our next print. But after that, the ball started rolling.
I'm so happy that you shared that book that you read and that sermon that you heard, because I think that sometimes we have these pivotal moments in our lives and they stick with you. And I think just listening to you describe what that book is about and whatever, it just kind of brings us back to that point where you were and just how impactful that was for you. And so I think it's important for us to really pay attention to those pivot points and pay attention to when God might be dropping one of those pivot points into your life and kind of asking you to wake up to what you've been doing and seeing where he wants you to move forward. I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about when you actually knew it was time to take that leap. Because I think a lot of people, whether they've started a ministry or whether they've started a business and they do it as a side hustle for a while, that's a big question. When do I know that I can sustain myself? When do I know that this thing's going to take off? It's a scary thing to go from either a corporate job or whatever type of steady income you have to taking this huge leap. So did you have any criteria, any things that you knew that you needed to have happen for you to be able to take that jump and go full in on your business?
Yeah, I toyed with that for a while because I was doing really well. I was, making a solid 6 figures, living in Manhattan, paying Manhattan rent, so it was like, you got to make enough money or else you're on the street, sister. And food, everything's expensive there. And so at the time, my company had a third-party sales mentor that they had hired. And I told her about my business, and she had a side hustle that she started a jewelry company. She'd been on the Today Show. And so I kind of asked her, like, hey, I'm thinking about, this is where my business is at. I'm thinking about making that leap. And then I had signed up for Tony Robbins' Business Mastery course, but you were given a coach leading up to the retreat. So I had these 2 coaches in my ear that I was mulling this over with, because it's not something you want to just leap into. I'm a leaper. I'm a hardcore leaper. I am like, my husband's a processor. I'm like that sounds great, let's do it, kind of person. And so it can be a good thing and it can be, a bad thing. And so I knew this was something I couldn't just leap with emotionally, because what I've learned about creativity is if you are stressed, it's really hard to be creative. And so, sometimes people are like, well, I just feel the calling of God on this. And that's great. Like, so did David, but it took a long time before he was king. You know what I mean? The anointing and the appointing has a space, and like, you need to become who you're called to become to sustain the dream that you have. And some really good advice I got was from Dave Ramsey's book, Entree Leader, on if you are going to jump from the dock to the boat, you need to wait till the boat pulls up to the dock, or you're going to just land in the water. You need to do it in a safe way. And so Meredith, my actual sales coach, she said, I would just save up 6 months of expenses and go for it. Like, save that up and then go for it. Give it your all. And if at the end of 6 months, you can't fully pay yourself what you need to live on, which you need to live on less than what you're probably making in your corporate job, like, figure out a way. I had to get rid of stuff. No more eyelash extensions, no more Rent the Runway, this, that, and the other that I was, wasting money on. And she said, after those 6 months, if you can't make it work, you go back to a job with the skill set that you have right now. Like, whatever skill set that you had that got you the job you're in, you can probably find another one, especially in this job market. So that was kind of nice to just know, like, give it the breathing room it needs, but have that money saved up so you're not so stressed and you're able to market and be creative and have joy in the process. And so that's what I did. I saved up 6 months of expenses and I quit. Mm-hmm. I was toying with the idea of staying part-time with my job. I even talked to them about it. But then I decided, no, I'm not doing it. So that's kind of what happened. It was once my December month hit like 50K, which half of that went to fulfillment and shipping fees that year, which was like a nightmare. But I hit a point where it was like, okay, this feels good. And I've got my 6 months saved up. I've proven that this has a strong following. It was proven that this product is something people want.
Yeah. It's such wisdom you just shared there, Polly, for anyone who's kind of in the boat of wanting to pursue this dream or this passion or whatever they might be looking at, just to kind of have those practical things that they can do. Because sometimes we think it's sort of mysterious. When should I leave? And how do I know? And, sometimes God makes it super clear, but also it's wisdom to say, well, I need money to live. So maybe I should have some money set aside before I quit my 9 to 5. So I appreciate you sharing that. So I'm sure in your journey of starting Horatio Printing and running your company that there may have been some barriers or some challenges that you faced along the way. So would you be willing to share a couple examples of some of the challenges or barriers you faced in this journey?
Challenges. Early on, I hit a challenge. It was partially mindset, but I told you earlier, I'm not a very good speller. And so when I started Horatio Printing, I lived on Horatio Street with a T. And so I was going to name my company Horatio because that means timekeeper in Latin. It's the street I was living on. It's a quaint little cobblestone street in the West Village. It's just gorgeous. It walks you right to the water, right south of Meatpacking District. And anyways, so I finally get my LLC in the mail. I'm still waiting on the planners to arrive. But at this point, the planners are printing. The Instagram's live, the website's live. I get my LLC documents from LegalZoom in the mail, and it says Horatio Printing with a C. And I that's what I typed it in as, so whatever. And then I go outside to take a picture to like monumentally, document this event. And I realized, oh my gosh, I spelled the company wrong. Like the whole thing. Everything, my URL, like the way it's printed in the planner, like all of it. It's Horacio. It's the Spanish spelling of Horatio. And at that moment, I really was like, who are you to think you can start a company? Are you kidding me? You can't even spell the title of the name right. Like you can't get this detail. Like you think you can do the accounting. You think you can do the taxes. You think you can sell these. You think you can, make people think you're trustworthy to create something. Like think about, you probably have so many misspellings in the planner. Like, my head reeled into like, what am I doing? Everyone's going to laugh at me. This is going to be this big joke. And for some people, it is still a big joke for them and they tease me, which is fine. But I was always the worst speller. And like, that was just who I was. And that idea that I'm not smart enough to do this was solidified. My table, my belief had a strong leg underneath it that, I could just look to that and go, see, I can't do this. And so I had to really get over that and just decide that I've already done it. And we're going to roll with it. And I'm going to give myself grace. I'm going to laugh about it. And God's going to use my little mistake and he's going to do something cool with it. And that's fine. And he did. There were, so many people that thought the company was a Spanish company. And we got all these Spanish speaking customers that were like, this is so cool. Like, when are you translating it into Spanish? Like my grandmother in, Brazil loves this, or, in Mexico or wherever. And so we started shipping so much. And then I moved the business to Orlando and, it was just, we were Horacio and like, that was cool. And here we are. And it doesn't matter, like you can keep going. You can make little mistakes. Like perfectionism wants to take you out. But that was, I think, one of the early hurdles is just perfectionism and just recognizing that and just going, I'm not going to let that take me out.
I think it's so neat that you, kept the name the way that, that misspelled, because that's something you're going to see now for the rest of time. And, I hope it's a good reminder that, it's really God that's doing the work, not us anyway, despite our weaknesses. But I think that story is so important because we all have those things. I think whether they're super public or not, we all have those moments where we're like, I really shouldn't be doing this. So on the flip side of that, I'm wondering if you could tell us any rewards that you've experienced, maybe even some that you may not have expected from running your business.
Wow, there's 100 because God is good. God breathed on this business for sure. We started partnering with A21 about a year and a half in, giving 10% of our revenue to A21. Now we give 20% of our profits to A21 quarterly, which is an anti-human trafficking organization. So we've raised about $66,000 to fight human trafficking. And when we started doing that, the next month, I got an email from Faithbox, and we ended up cutting a deal where they put my planner in 10,000 of their subscription boxes that year. So that was just insane. That was like this huge growth thing that happened like literally the year after we started, which was incredible. I've also had so many miracle stories. Like one I guess it was 2 years ago, we had a company that I was printing my soap Bible studies with who took our deposit, and that company was sold. And the person who bought it just ran it into the ground, took all their money, and nothing of my soaps got printed. I never got a refund. It was like $5,000. Like, that's a lot when it comes to an inventory investment. And that was only like 50%. I had paid the deposit to get it going. And it was like, what are we going to do? And they were like, a lady that worked there was like, you need to sue them. I'm like, I don't have the money to like sue people. Like, what do you want me to do? So I ended up having to go with my old printer, wire them the money, get it going. And I put a note on LinkedIn, and this sweet couple reached out to me. And this was at the beginning of the pandemic. This was the beginning of 2020. Reached out to me and they said, God put it on our heart to mail you the exact amount of money that was taken from you. And they sent me a check to the penny. And they were like, we don't want any honor. We don't want you to share our name. But they were an amazing homeschool workbook printing company. So their business exploded during the pandemic. And they're this awesome faith-based Christian homeschool company. I should give you the link so you can put in the show notes, just because we do need to honor these people. They're so amazing. But that was just this huge fall on the ground miracle of just like, God is so good and he's got you. He will take care of you. He will sustain you. There's so much reward. And sometimes I think people come to me and they're like, okay, well, how much of this do I do? And how much of this do I wait on God for? And that's something that like, I'm really passionate about, that question of like, okay, do I just wait on God to give me the funds for my business? Do I wait on God to tell me the name? Do I wait on God for this, that, and the other? Because, we hear that a lot. I'm waiting on God, or God told me to wait, or I don't know if I should move, so I should probably wait on God, and we just get in this like space. And I think sometimes we have this almost excuse because we're really just perfectionists and we're scared, and it's fear. And so this is my answer to that. If you're sitting in a place where you're like, I think I'm waiting on God, but I feel like should be doing something, but I don't know. Here's my opinion. You bring your 100. I've seen so much fruit in this math equation. You bring your 100% to make it happen. And when you bring your 100%, God brings his 100%. And that's the equation. It's not like, okay, well, it's 10% me and 90% God. It's 1% me and 99% God. No, it's 100% you and it's 100% God. But God's 100 is a bajillion times better than yours. But we still have to show up to do what we can do. And then God will do what we can't do. So I think what I've seen miracles in is when I show up and bring my 100. I pursue excellence. As a Christian company, as a Christian brand, I need to have the most excellent planner on the market because it's Christian, which means it should be excellent, not B rated. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's a Christian movie. Oh, is it good? Yeah, it's a Christian movie. It's super good for a Christian. Like we get this like sub rating, like, oh, well, it's Christian. So like, let's just give them grace for it being a little subpar. Like, what is that?
Why?
If it's Christian, it should be the best because it's God inspired. So like, let's aspire to be the best, not perfection, but excellence. And so that's been my motto is like, you show up and do the things that God has called you to do. And you bring your 100, and in that you will see miracles of God bringing his 100 and taking it way beyond where you could take it.
That's so beautiful, Polly. And I love that because one of my business values is excellence. So I'm like, yes, I 100% agree with that. And I have to say, when I got your planner in the mail and I opened the box, I was blown away just from the moment of opening the box and taking it out of the beautiful bag and opening it, everything, just was excellence. So you're doing an amazing job with that.
Well, I still make mistakes. Don't get me wrong. There's still some mistakes here and there for sure.
Right. It doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean that we have to do things perfectly, but definitely aiming for that excellence, I think, is a wonderful thing to do as Christian leaders. So in your journey of leading this company, I'm sure you have team members and employees and lots of challenges along the way. How has leading Horatio Printing grown your leadership skills?
Oh, trial by fire, learning as you go so much, there's so much you can't learn until you get there, and like, that's just, it is what it is. You make mistakes and you figure it out. You have to be willing to give grace and extend grace and be grace filled. I think the two things that I've really learned is clarify and verify, which was a big Tony Robbins lesson. He said if he was going to have two more kids, he would name them clarify and verify, because it's through unclarity or not verifying information that all the mistakes happen. And some mistakes can really cost you a lot in a business. And, mistakes are just not what you want. So I think what I've learned is the importance of clarification, and also the importance of making sure I don't make impulsive decisions with hires. I said before, like, I'm really impulsive. Like, I'll just be like, oh, gut feeling, you're it. Like, let's go. Because I'll typically start to hire when I needed someone 2 months ago. And so I'll be in this rushed process. So making sure that this is the right person, that I pray on it, and that I'm asking all the questions of, is this your dream job? Like, does this amount of money work for you? Because if your employees stressed about their finances, they're not going to be creative either, right? Because that doesn't work. So I feel like a lot of what I learned in terms of how to do things correctly came from Dave Ramsey's book, EntreLeader. He has such great advice on hiring and the hiring process and how strenuous you should be, because I'm such a leaper. I'm so impulsive, and it's really burned me in the past. So yeah, that's my advice there.
It's good to hear someone else is also a leaper, because that's me. That's why Esther and I work so well together, because she's the opposite. And I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's do this. And she's like, hold on, maybe
we should just move like our pinky toe one little millimeter forward first.
So we balance
a little bit of the leaving.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We balance each other out. But I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I sometimes feel like I'm in a sea of people who take things a little bit more slowly. But so I'm glad to have someone on my side. So you talked about A21 a few minutes ago, and I'm wondering if you could talk to us about that decision, about how you decided to partner with them, how you decided to give 20% of your profits to them, and maybe why you chose them.
Yeah. So Christine Kane came to my church in New York, and I knew like human trafficking was probably a thing, but it definitely was not on my forefront of my brain. Like, I wasn't really aware of how big it was, how big of $1 billion industry it was, how, less than 1% of these pimps are even prosecuted. Like, it's a high reward, low risk business to get into. And so the act of owning people and the misery that these people go through. And so we watched a video, and she spoke, and my heart was broken. And that song had just come out, Break My Heart for What Breaks Yours. And I'd sang it. And God was like, here you go. This is what breaks my heart. And at the time when I started Horatio at the very beginning, I just started tithing to my company, to my church. Because I didn't really know, like, okay, it's a Christian company. What should I do with my money? Well, I just gave 10% to church, because I was like, I don't know, I feel bad. I'm taking money. I think sometimes we get a hang up of like making money as a Christian. I was definitely in that boat, and I already was making a solid amount at my corporate job. And so I just was like, I'm going to give 10% of what we earn to church. And then after I heard that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to give 10% to A21 instead. And so I just moved those funds over. It was an impulse. It was definitely just, I left, and like, that was it. God blessed it. I got confirmation that like, yeah, you're on the right path. This is what you should do. And then we changed it up to be 20% of profits when I moved my accounting system, because my accounting system was kind of fly by the seat of your pants for a few years. And with being a leaper and making money, you could really get yourself into a pickle, because you're like, you know what? I would like to make journals. You know what? I would like to make a calendar. You know what? I would like to make a Bible study, and then you just start buying all this stuff and you lose all your money. And it's like, okay, well, how can I hire people? I don't know what money's for what. And there's just so many moving parts in a product-based business. And so when I found Mike Michalowicz, his book, The Pumpkin Plan and Profit First, are phenomenal for business owners. And Profit First, although it sounds kind of unchristian because you're like focused on profit, it really flips the equation of, usually you think of revenue minus expenses equals profit. But instead, you make your revenue, you take your profit first, and then you use the rest for expenses. And what it does is it helps you realize how many stupid expenses you have and getting rid of them. And it's like cash envelopes for your business. So once a month or twice a month, you take all that you've earned and you put it into these bank accounts, like little cash envelope holdings. This one's for profit. This one's for expenses. This one's for owner's compensation. This one's for taxes. So you're saving money for taxes like you should do, right? And this is saving for future inventory purchases. And once you have your money in these beautiful little cash envelope accounts, you can actually know how much you can pay yourself, if you're ready to hire somebody, how much profit you have, and if you have the money in your inventory account to actually purchase the inventory. So it takes a lot of the stressful, like finger in the wind when it comes to running a business and really gives you practical views of where you're at. So that's been helpful in leadership because you need to be able to run the accounting for you to be properly leading and like making payroll and also paying yourself, which is usually what we neglect. You know, we're going to make sure everyone else gets paid, but like we're out in the wind, you know, and that's not really the way to be, especially once I became a mom. It was like, okay, I've actually got to bring home some money. Like I can't keep staying in debt. And so it helps me get out of debt completely as a business and then also set aside money. So now I have, you know, future months of income for me in that account. And I can see how much is in the profit account. And in that profit account is where we give to A21. So it's clear, it's visible. And so that's kind of how that change happened. I felt very good about it. And we're still able to give a lot to A21, but it's not 10% of overall gross revenue. It's profit because that makes sense, right? Yeah. And that was confirming for me. And I've actually got to meet the A21 team in Greece, and Christine Kane spoke at our Dreamers Summit last year, which was a huge blessing and just wild that she actually said yes. I was like, oh my gosh. So that's just been really cool, the different partnerships and what we've seen through that.
Oh man, Polly, you are in the right place. Esther and I were smiling over here because I am a profit first professional and just got to meet Mike recently in September. And just, you know, like, so
all the things you're saying, I'm just like, Polly is loving this.
Your listeners are probably like, we know. Profit first.
We actually haven't really talked about it on the podcast though. So you explained it so well that
you did.
I'm sure it helped a lot of gals who are business
Do you want to become a profit first professional?
Oh gosh, no. I had enough nightmare doing it for myself, but I do teach it in my business course because I do recommend that. And then having a bookkeeper that is profit first efficient, you know, is critical. Yeah.
You're getting all the 5 stars from me. I'm just like,
oh, I love it. Oh, that's so cool, Polly. I love, you know, it sounds like you listen to God. Like it seems like just in hearing your story, it sounds like you pay attention and you listen to God. And for someone like me, who tends to be a slow action taker, sometimes I take a little too long to take action on what God has already said to do. So I love that you have had that, like you heard about A21, it spoke to your heart and you were like, boom, I'm going to donate money to them. You know, it just, that inspires me. So thank you for sharing that. So I want to talk just for a couple minutes before we wrap up about this idea of dreaming, because as a planner company and as, you know, some of the things you do in your business, you love to help women with their dreams. So could you share a little bit about how we can dream big, especially after a season or even a year of disappointment? You know, I think a lot of people's dreams have maybe not come true in the past couple of years. So any thoughts on how we can actually dream big?
That's such a good question. I love that question. And I have the dream planning podcast. So if you're like, I want to hear more about dreaming, like I got a whole podcast for you.
Perfect.
And I just hosted the Dreamers Summit. We had Dawn Tree Wilkerson, Allie Worthington, Tony Collier. Amazing event where we actually go through and fill out the planner together. And you can snag replay it if you want to watch it over, you know, New Year's Eve or something with your girlfriends. Super fun, active workshop to dream big, because I think it takes intentionality to dream. You know, like I think that time that we would normally be dreaming, we end up getting caught on Instagram or TikTok and stuff. And so dreaming requires some stillness, and that takes intentionality in this day and age. So that's the first thing. But I think when it comes to dreaming, when we've had a year of maybe hopelessness or, things that our experiences are showing us that that's probably not going to be in the cards for us, we have to remember the goodness of God and remember how powerful He is. I think my advice for you as you aspire to dream big is to take time to ask yourself some really important questions of what dream is on my heart for next year, and who do I want to become next year? Other great question would be, if I was laying in bed and I was so excited to wake up tomorrow because tomorrow was a big dream that was happening. And I was laying in bed and it's like Christmas Eve when I'm a kid. What are you doing that next day? What is so exciting that you're laying in bed for that? What's a way you want to partner with God next year? And take time to write out that bucket list. And that's what's in the front of our planner, is a bucket list. And I have a podcast episode that actually helps you craft your bucket list. And I just sit there for like 20 minutes asking you questions. We also do that at the summit. But I think the biggest dream we can have is becoming the person God's called you to become. That's the number one dream. In my dream crafting course, that's where we start. We don't start with the big dream of starting the business. What we got to do is start by getting you healthy. Because if you're unhealthy or toxic in your heart, your dreams are going to be toxic and you're not going to have a healthy business. Like a healthy you will run a healthy business. A healthy you will pursue that healthy dream, right? Like if your dream is to have a great, thriving marriage, you have to also heal yourself in a way, right? To sustain that dream, to keep it going. And so becoming who you're called to become is the first big dream that I would say, pursue that. And you do that by assessing how you're doing. We have a personal growth wheel in our planner with 8 slices of pie. How are you doing spiritually, financially, in your home, in your relationships? If you're a mom, in your motherhood, how are you doing in all these areas of your life? What area is really discouraged and what area are you really feeling encouraged in? And through that assessment, you can actually craft little things that we're going to add into your week to help build you up, these fundamental needs that we need to add into your week so that you can be whole and you can pursue the big dreams. And so we take you through that whole process in the planner, because I think that's the biggest dream, is becoming who you're called to become. And that's the biggest step of growth. If you want to grow, you have to become. If you want to dream, you have to become. And so becoming is really the big dream. That's really my advice there. And I don't just say that to say it. I say it to hopefully lead you to action, because we can hear really good things or, oh, that was a great podcast. But if you don't take the time to go write it down and live it out and make a change, this is just a podcast you listen to. It's not a catalyst for your growth. So if you're like listening to podcasts to grow, I want to challenge you to sit down with a journal, to grab a planner, or sit down just with a blank journal and say, okay, what's the action I'm taking based off what I heard today? You know, when you go to hear a great sermon, like that's great, but what action are you taking because you heard this today? You know, that's my big passion, is like not just to hear things, but to take action on them. So that's my advice there.
I'm so glad that we are able to talk about this part too, because I think that so many times, and I'll just speak it for moms, but we kind of get derailed on those dreams and we kind of forget, in sacrifice to other things, what God has created us for. And that's a big thing that we like to talk about, is purpose and your giftings and what God's called you to do. And so I love that you are taking it that next step and saying, okay, write it down and be intentional and give yourself the time to dream. I also love that you talk about, getting yourself healthy first, because I never really heard anyone say, when you are toxic, that bleeds over into your dreams and that sort of thing. And so it's so true, isn't it so interesting that the first step is usually always to get yourself healthy?
And not perfect. Right. You don't have to wait to pursue a dream till you're perfect, because that won't happen. But that's why there's evil dreams out there. People say, I get the question a lot, how do I know if it's God's will, this dream, or if it's my will? How do I know? And it's like, okay, Did it come from a place of toxicity, from coveting?
Yeah.
Did you see it on Instagram and now you want it because your neighbor has it? Like,
Yeah.
where did the dream birth from? And are you in a healthy place? Are you scared, having a scared dream? Because like evil births evil dreams, right? That's why we have bombings and things that are evil, that are crafted.
Yeah.
That's a dream. That's not the kind of dream I want to pursue, right? And so it's about making sure your heart's healthy, you're forgiving, you're removing yourself from bitterness and fear so that you're not dreaming out of fear.
So good. Oh my goodness. I'm like, yeah, just preach it. So one of the tools that you talk about or recommend women using is a vision board. And in the online space specifically, oftentimes vision boards are used from a place of things like manifestation or the law of attraction. So I'm wondering if you can delineate those things out for us, because those are obviously not places we want to come from. So if you could kind of talk about your idea of this vision board and how to use it in a godly way, I would love to hear that.
Yeah, there's a lot out there, what's called the New Age, that I didn't even know existed, or at least the term the New Age or whatnot. Because back in the day when I was in sales before Horatio, like I did look into The Secret. I did look into the law of attraction. I didn't know any better. And I remember calling my mom and telling her about this. And my boss had told me to watch The Secret because he wanted me to have more sales. And I taped up a check on my desk and I told my mom, and my mom said, "You better watch out who you're praying to." That's what she said. Sweet Alabama mom. And so she was right. She was totally right. And when I started looking into the truth behind The Secret and manifestation, and I also heard a testimony from this girl, Natalie, on YouTube, who had a demonic presence visit her after doing manifestation for her YouTube channel, it all clicked for me. And so all that to say, I am not a manifestation teacher. I'm not saying I don't believe in the law of attraction, because I think there are forces that can attract things to you. And it's just scary. It's not a place we want to be, like you said. And so let me tell you my vision for a vision board. When I'm crafting a vision board, it's comprised of two things: who I want to become in Christ and my dreams. And that's it. I take what I've built off my bucket list of like things that I've dreamed with God, usually at the Dreamer Summit, I create it. And then who I'm becoming in Christ. Like, I want to become more spiritually encouraged. Okay, what's my action? I want to do a first 15 Bible study. I want to make sure I'm really prioritizing my Sabbath next year. The other things, I have my vision board up here. I want to take a dance class. I want financial peace. I want to finish baby step number 3 on Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. So for me, a vision board is comprised of who I'm becoming in Christ and my big dreams, and they all connect together. But all of my vision is submitted to the will of God. All of it. In the middle of my bucket list, I have a circle that says, "Thy will be done." And that's something we're going to do at the summit. Once you write out your dreams, we're going to place our hands over our dreams and submit all of them to the will of God, because ultimately that's how we're called to pray. It's how we're called to dream. It's how we're called to live, is to submit everything to the will of God. And God will open the door. He'll close the door. He'll do what's supposed to happen. But that's really my thoughts on a vision board. I don't think it's evil as long as you have the right boundaries with it and you're submitting it to the will of God. And for me, it's a visual reminder of who I'm becoming. I have this beautiful board that reminds me about Sabbath and my dream of being debt-free, which is biblical. It's a biblical vision board, and it says in the Bible, write the vision, make it plain. And so I don't think vision, just because some people have twisted that word, doesn't mean we can't reclaim it for God.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that point that you're making, Polly, because I think sometimes we hear some of these terms, and because, like you said, they're associated with something that's not of God, we just think we have to be we can't associate with it at all. And there's no truth or no good in it. And it's really just the world has taken something that is good and twisted it into something not. So we can use it in the way that would honor God.
And the other thing is usually vision boards are made from magazines, right? Like we think of a vision board and it's like, I'm going to get my Cosmos out and my, Magnolia journal and whatever other magazines you have laying around. And you're not going to find the words in those magazines that you need for your vision board of Sabbath and rest and breath and God first and higher, like all those words that you need for a vision board that would align with who you're becoming in Christ, that would align with your motherhood goals. And so I built power sheets, these pages that come with your ticket, you print them out, and it actually has those words on it. So I give them what I would use on a vision board, which is things that have all the Dave Ramsey baby steps in them and the things that you would have in a Christian vision board, because that way you're not like sifting through all these magazines, like just coveting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you can also print stuff out on your own, create your own words on Canva or whatever, and print it out at home. And you need to make it unique to the dreams that God gave you and who you're becoming.
Yeah. So good. All right, Polly, I feel like we could talk for a lot longer. I have loved what you have shared. It's been so, so helpful. I know it's going to really encourage and I think inspire the women that are listening as we go into, the new year and think about the future. So thank you for sharing. We always like to wrap up talking about the fact that leaders are learners. And so we know, as you said at the beginning, that you are an avid reader, podcast listener. Is there maybe one resource that you have either listened to or read recently that you feel you would like to share with our audience that could benefit them in their journey?
I really love Chelsea Joe from Systemize Your Life podcast. She speaks to mompreneurs. I don't know if you guys are familiar. She has a whole system, and she spoke at my summit last year, and I loved her content so much. We actually morphed part of our planner to like have her workbook in there for the fundamental needs system. It was basically the missing puzzle piece between, okay, here are my goals, and like, how do I make a week that includes that? And so she has an academy, she has a podcast, and it's all about these systems for your life. She's practical and simple, and it's really, really good. She doesn't have a book yet, but she does have an amazing academy for Christian work from home mompreneurs. And I would highly recommend her if you're looking for a new podcast to jump into and some practical support.
I am definitely going to have to check that out because that sounds really interesting and right up my alley. So, Okay. Lastly, if you wouldn't mind telling our listeners, what's the best way that they can connect with you? How can they follow you? How can they learn more about your courses and products and all of those types of things?
Of course, you can go to Horatio Printing, HORACIO printing.com. And that's where all of our products are, planners. And then we also have a website for my academy, thedreamerinyou.com. The goal is to awaken the dreamer in you. There you can find the Faith-Filled Business Blueprint, the Dream Crafting course, and also a replay of the Dreamer Summit if you want to watch that on your own time and fill everything out, create your vision board, fill out your planner, and get your vision out for 2022.
Awesome, Polly. Thank you so much for being with us today on the podcast.
Yay, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the Christian Women Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving us a rating and review in your podcast app? This helps more women just like you find the podcast. And it also helps them to know whether the podcast would be a good fit for them. Just go to the show in your podcast app, then scroll down until you see the option for ratings and reviews. From there, you can tap to rate and write a review. It means the world to us when you take a couple minutes to do this, and thank you so much to everyone who has left a review. Now, don't forget, your leadership matters, and it's time for you to embrace your gifts and lead with confidence.